Chess openings everyone should know. So, you're looking to start your game with a winning mindset right away, aren't you? You're in luck. Today, we'll look at 15 openings that everyone should know and that can seriously up your game. Let's not waste any more time and get started right away. Number 1. The Ruy Lopez. This is a move from centuries ago, but it went down in history thanks to the legend, and it starts like this. e4 to e5. That's White's first move. e4 is one of the most popular and classical opening moves. Black responds with e5, mirroring White's central control and setting up a symmetrical play. nf3, nc6. White moves the knight to f3, attacking Black's e5 pawn. Black moves the knight to c6 to defend the pawn. b5. White moves the bishop to b5, attacking the knight on c6 and putting pressure on the pawn in the center. With this, White saying, I'm taking control of the center and I'm putting some pressure on you. The bishop on b5 is pinning the knight, creating tension and potential weaknesses in Black's position. The Ruy Lopez is super popular from beginners all the way up to grandmasters. Why? It's solid, it's flexible, and it can lead to all sorts of interesting positions. As White, you're aiming to control the center, develop your pieces, and maybe even launch a kingside attack. Black has several ways to defend, like pushing a6 to question the bishop, or playing nf6 to develop and prepare for bc5. As you get more experienced, you'll discover tons of variations within the Ruy Lopez, but this one is a good start. Number 2. The Italian game. The Italian game is like the Ruy Lopez's cousin, and it starts in almost the same way. e4, e5. White and Black both move a pawn to the center, which helps control the board and open lines for their pieces. nf3, nc6. White moves the knight to f3, attacking Black's pawn on e5. Black responds by moving the knight to c6, defending the pawn and preparing to develop more pieces. c4. White moves the bishop to c4, aiming at the weak f7 square near Black's king. This move helps White control the center and prepare for a quick attack. So, instead of aiming at the Black's knight, White's bishop is eyeing that juicy f7 pawn. This opening often leads to open, exciting games where both sides can go on the attack. It's great for beginners because it follows all the opening rules. Control the center, develop your pieces, and get ready to castle. In the Italian game, things can heat up quickly. White might go for a quick kingside attack with moves like d3 and h3 qe2. Black can counter with bc5, mirroring White's bishop, or go for d6 and f5 to challenge White's center. One popular variation is the gioco piano, which means quiet game in Italian, although it's often anything but quiet. Here, both sides develop calmly before the fireworks start. Another exciting line is the Evans Gambit, where White sacrifices a pawn with b4 to gain a lead in development. 3. The Sicilian defense. When White plays 1 e4, a lot of strong players like to reply with the Sicilian e4 c5. Black's move to c5 aims to create an unbalanced position. And now the game's more complex and sharp, and both sides have a good chance to win. Black is fighting for the d4 square, and is often willing to accept a backward d-pawn in exchange for active piece play. Number 4. The French defense. When White plays 1 e4, Black can reply with the French defense. 1 e4 e6. Here, Black's getting ready to challenge the center with d5 on the next move. The French often leads to closed positions where you need to think strategically. It's perfect for players who like to plan ahead and don't mind a bit of squeeze earlier on. So, Black typically follows up with 2 d5, directly challenging White's center. White then has a few main options. The advanced variation 3 e5. White pushes the pawn forward, leading to a game where the pieces move around behind the pawns. The exchange variation 3 exd5. White exchanges pawns, making the game simpler and more balanced. The Teresh variation 3 d2. White moves the knight to support the e4 pawn and prepares to defend the center. The Wenawa variation 3 nc3 b4. Black pins the knight with the bishop, creating tension and interesting play. Each of these lines has its own character. In many French defense positions, Black will try to undermine White's pawn chain with c5 and f6, while White often looks for ways to exploit Black's somewhat cramped kingside. It's a great choice if you enjoy strategic battles and don't mind defending for a while before launching your counterattack. Number 5. The Caro-Kann. Similar to the French, the Caro-Kann is a solid choice for Black. 1 e4 c6. Black's preparing to push d5, but supporting it with the c pawn first. It's like building a strong foundation before putting up the walls. The Caro-Kann is known for being really solid. It's been a favorite of many world champions. After 2, d4, d5, the main lines are the advanced variation, 3, e5. White pushes the pawn, leading to a game with a closed center, similar to the French defense. The exchange variation, 3, ex, d5. White exchanges pawns, leading to a balanced position with symmetrical pawns. The classic variation, 3, nc3 or 3, nd2. White develops a knight, keeping the tension in the center. In the Caro-Kann, black often develops the light-squared bishop outside the pawn chain with bf5 or bg4. This active piece of play, combined with a solid pawn structure, gives black a good long-term prospect. Number 6. The Scandinavian defense. If you like to stir things up right away, check out the Scandinavian. 1. e4, d5. Black's immediately fighting for the center, but it's a bold move that can catch some players off guard. After 2, ex, d5, black has 2 main recaptures. 2, qx, d5, which looks a bit odd, bringing the queen out so early, but can be quite tricky. 2, nf6, known as the modern Scandinavian, leading to more positional play. If black goes for 2, qx, d5, the game might continue with n, c3, white attacks the queen, making it move again. Q, a5, the queen moves to a5, where it can still keep an eye on the center and is a bit safer. d4, white takes control of the center by moving another pawn. N, f6, black develops a knight to f6, attacking white's pawn on d4. N, f3, develops the knight to f3, defending the pawn on d4 and preparing to develop other pieces. At this point, black needs to be careful not to fall behind in development. The plan often includes quickly developing the light-squared bishop to f5 or g4 and castling queenside to get the king to safety. Number 7. The Pirc defense. The Pirc is what we call the hypermodern opening. It goes like this. 1. e4, d6. Black starts by attacking the center from a distance. The move d6 prepares to support the center with pawns and pieces later on. 2. d4, n, f6. White takes control of the center with pawns. Black develops a knight to f6, attacking white's e4 pawn and preparing to develop more pieces. 3. n, c3, g6. White develops the knight to c3, supporting the center. Black fianchettos, or prepares to fianchetto, preparing to control a long diagonal for both defense and attack, the bishop with g6, aiming to place it on g7 for long-range control. Black's plan is to let white take the center with pawns, then try to undermine it later. It's like letting your opponent build a sandcastle and then slowly washing it away with the tide. This requires patience, but can be really effective if you know what you're doing. Number 8. The King's Indian defense. Similar to the Pirc, the King's Indian is another hypermodern defense. 1. d4, n, f6. White starts by taking control of the center with the pawn on d4. Black develops knight to f6, attacking the d4 pawn and preparing for further development. 2. c4, g6. White supports the center with c4. Black fianchettos, prepares to fianchetto the bishop with g6, aiming to place it on g7 for long-range control. 3. n, c3, b, g7. White develops the knight to c3, supporting the d4 pawn. Black competes the fianchetto by placing the bishop on g7, where it will help control the center and long diagonals. The main idea in the King's Indian is to allow white to build up a big pawn center and then undermine it with well-timed pawn breaks. Black often plays e5, challenging white's d4 pawn, or c5, putting pressure on the queen side. Number 9. The Queen's Gambit. Moving to white openings that start with 1, d4, we've got the Queen's Gambit, not the Netflix show. 1, d4, d5. Now, white and black both control the center with pawns. 2, c4. White's offering a pawn sacrifice to get control of the center. It's like trading a pawn for a better piece activity. The Queen's Gambit can lead to all sorts of interesting positions and is a favorite amongst top players. Black has 2 main responses. The Queen's Gambit, accepted, 2, dx, c4, where black takes the pawn but has to work to hold on to it. Queen's Gambit declined, 2, e6, where black maintains the tension in the center. In the accepted line, white usually follows up with e3 and bx, c4, regaining the pawn while developing. Black has to be careful not to fall behind in development while trying to hold on to the extra pawn. In the declined, we often see a classic pawn chain forming, with white's pawns on c4 and d4 facing off against black pawns on e6 and d5. The battle often revolves around white trying to advance c5 and black trying to play c5 themselves. This is a good opening for whites, as it offers good chances for an advantage if played correctly, but it requires precise play. Number 10. The Nimzo Indian Defense. Now, a popular response to the Queen's Gambit setup is the Nimzo Indian. 1. d4, n, f6. Black develops a knight to f6, attacking white's pawn on d4 and preparing for more development. c4, e6. Black supports the d5 square and prepares to challenge white's center. 3. nc3, b, b4. Black pins the knight on c3, creating some pressure on white and makes it costly for white to move the knight. The Nimzo Indian is flexible and solid, which is why many strong players love it. 11. The Dutch defense. But for those who like to play aggressively as black against 1 d4, there's the Dutch. 1 d4 f5. Black's immediately fighting for the e4 square and getting ready for a kingside attack. And by playing f5, black fights for control over the e4 square and gets ready for an aggressive setup. It's a bit risky, but hey, no risk, no reward, right? Number 12. The English opening. Moving away from 1 e4 and 1 d4, we've got the English. 1 c4. White's controlling the center without committing the e or d pawns early. It's like keeping your options open for later in the game. The English can turn into many types of positions, which makes it great for surprising your opponents. Number 13. The Reti opening. Another flexible opening is the Reti. 1 n f3. White moves the knight onto f3, which is a good development move and controls important squares. It's waiting to see what black does and respond accordingly with ease. Here, you can adapt to whatever your opponent throws at you. 14. Alakin's defense, inviting trouble. Named after a world champion, Alakin's defense goes 1 e4 n f6. Black develops the knight to f6, attacking white's pawn on e4 right away. This move challenges white's central pawn and sets the stage for dynamic play. Now, be aware, because this one, it's like poking a bear. It might seem risky, but it can lead to some really exciting games. Number 15. The Budapest Gambit. Our final opening is an aggressive option for black against 1 d4. 1 d4 n f6. White moves the pawn to d4, aiming to control the center of the board. Then black develops the knight to f6, attacking the d4 pawn and preparing to control the center as well. 2 c4 e5. White supports the d4 pawn and controls the center from the queen side. Then black plays the pawn to e5, challenging the white's d4 pawn directly and aiming to take control of the center. So basically, black's sacrificing a pawn for rapid development and attacking chances. The main idea of the Budapest Gambit is to quickly develop pieces and put pressure on white's position. It's a great choice if you enjoy tactical attacking chess and you don't mind taking some risks. So there you have it, 15 chess that can add some serious spice to your games in less than 10 minutes. Which one will you try first? Let me know in the comments, and if you like the videos, hit the button, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and we'll see you in the next lesson.